The cold sweat stuck my hair to my forehead. My body was shaking uncontrollably. A mix of absolute exhaustion and the adrenaline that only a mother knows after bringing a life into this world. The cry of my baby, my little Leo, was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was strong, vibrant, and full of life. The nurses smiled as they cleaned the baby and prepared to hand him to me. I searched with my eyes for Alejandro Castillo, my husband, the man for whom I had defied my own family, the man for whom I had given up my name and my inheritance, to live a simple life and prove to my father that true love existed without money involved. Alejandro Castillo stood by the window of the private hospital suite. He wore his impeccable designer suit. Not a single wrinkle, not a trace of emotion. He stared out toward the horizon of skyscrapers, ignoring the miracle that had just happened behind him on the bed. Alejandro, I whispered with a hoarse voice. Come see him. He is perfect. He has your eyes. Alejandro turned slowly. There was no love in his gaze. There was no tenderness. Only cold calculation and a repulsion that chilled my blood. More than the hospital air conditioning. He walked toward the bed. He leaned over me. I thought he was going to kiss me. I thought he would say thank you. I thought that upon seeing his son, his heart of ice would finally melt. But Alejandro brought his lips close to my ear. I could smell his expensive cologne. The one I had given him with my savings as a secretary. I wish I had never married you, he whispered. Time stopped. Leo's cry seemed to fade into a dull buzz. What? I asked, believing it was a hallucination from the anesthesia. I said I wish I had never married you, he repeated. This time out loud, straightening up and brushing an imaginary speck of dust from his jacket. You are pathetic, Elena Vargas. Look at yourself, sweaty, fat, destroyed. You disgust me. Alejandro, we just had a son. My tears began to flow, hot and painful. Correction, he said coldly. You had a son. I fulfilled the clause in my grandfather's will. I needed a male heir before turning 30. To access the family trust of $500 million. And you, with your peasant fertility and your naivety, were the perfect and cheap incubator. The door to the room burst open. In walked Mrs. Carmen Castillo, my mother-in-law, a woman who had always looked at me as if I were a stain on her Persian rug. She entered followed by a young, stunning blonde woman, Valeria. Has he been born? Asked Carmen without even looking at me. Is it a boy? Is it a boy, mother? Said Alejandro, smiling for the first time. But not at me, but at the millions the baby represented. Perfect, said Carmen. The lawyer already has the papers ready. Valeria, darling, call the press. Announce the birth of the Castillo heir. But make sure only Alejandro and the baby appear in the photo. No one wants to see the mother. Valeria approached the bed and looked at me with fake pity. Poor thing, she said. You look terrible, darling. You should rest. Alejandro and I will take care of everything from now on. What are you talking about? I shouted, trying to sit up. But the pain stopped me. He is my son. Alejandro pulled an envelope from his pocket and threw it on my legs. These are the divorce papers. Elena Vargas, sign them. I will give you a pension of $5,000 a month for 1 year. It is more than you earned in that cafe where I found you. I am not signing anything, I said, hugging myself, feeling the emptiness of my arms without my baby, whom the confused nurses had placed in the crib far from me. You will sign, intervened Carmen, approaching. Because if you do not, we will declare you mentally incompetent. We have paid doctors who will say you have severe postpartum depression and violent tendencies. You will never see the child. You are monsters. We are business people, darling, said Carmen. And you were a bad emotional investment. But an excellent biological one. Now your contract is over. Alejandro approached the crib. He looked at my son like someone looking at a bearer check. Welcome to the world, Alejandro Jr., he said. Your mother is going away for a while. But do not worry, Valeria will be an excellent stepmother. Get her out of here, ordered Alejandro to his security guards waiting in the hallway. I want this room clean for the photos and take away her cheap things. 2 men entered, lifted me from the bed, still weak and bleeding, and put me in a wheelchair. No, my baby, let me say goodbye, I screamed, stretching my arms toward the crib, but no one listened. The nurses looked down, intimidated by the power of the Castillos. Alejandro turned his back on me. Carmen was retouching her makeup. They took me out through the hospital's back door under the rain. They left me on the sidewalk with a plastic bag containing my old clothes and the divorce envelope. I stayed there under the storm, watching the lights of the hospital room where my son was being held by my husband's mistress. I cried until I had no tears left. I cried until I felt I was dying. But in that moment, in the darkest depths of my despair, I remembered who I really was. They thought I was Elena Vargas, the poor orphan. They did not know my real name was Elena Vargas, the only daughter of the most powerful banking dynasty in Europe and Latin America. I had fled my life of luxury to find sincere love. I had pretended to be poor to make sure they did not want me for my money. And in doing so, I had fallen into the trap of a man who loved money more than anything. I got up from the wet ground. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I wish you had never married me, Alejandro, I whispered to the wind, repeating his words. You are right, because marrying me will be the mistake that destroys your life, your name, and your legacy. I reached into the secret pocket of my old denim jacket. There, sewn into the fabric, was the only thing left from my previous life. A black titanium card and a satellite microphone. I dialed the only number I knew by heart. Castillo Residence, answered a deep voice on the other side. Ramon, I said. My voice no longer trembled. It was the voice of a queen who had awakened from a nightmare. It is me, Elena. There was silence on the other end, then a sound of contained emotion. Miss Elena, my God, your father has been looking for you for 3 years. Where are you? I am in hell, Ramon, but I am coming out. I need you to send the jet and I need the best lawyers in the world. Not the merger ones, I need the sharks, the ones that destroy companies. What happened, child? They have declared war on me, Ramon, and I am going to respond with a nuclear bomb. Before I tell you how I destroyed their lives and recovered my son with the force of a hurricane, I need to ask you a favor. If you are against cruelty and believe a mother is capable of burning the world for her child, give this video a strong like right now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. What I am about to do to the Castillo family is something that will be studied in the history books of revenge. Believe me, you will not want to miss a single second. The transformation. 6 months passed. 6 months in which the world believed that Elena Vargas had disappeared, probably dead in some alley. Alejandro Castillo lived the high life. With Leo's birth he had accessed his trust fund. He bought yachts, mansions, and turned Valeria into the lady of the house. My son was being raised by nannies while his father posed for magazines as businessman of the year. But in the shadows something was moving. I returned to my father's mansion in Switzerland. I recovered physically, trained my mind and body. And together with my father, who cried with rage when he learned what they had done to me, we plotted the plan. I do not only want my son back, Father, I told him one night by the fireplace. I want him to know who I am. I want Alejandro to feel what it is like to be pathetic and poor. I want to buy everything he loves and burn it in front of his eyes. My father nodded. Then let us do it. We will buy his debt. We began the silent attack. Through shell companies, my conglomerate, Grupo Castillo, began to buy the promissory notes of Alejandro's company. We bought his mortgages. We bought his suppliers. In 3 months we owned the air Alejandro Castillo breathed. And he did not even know it. He thought his businesses were booming because a mysterious investor was injecting capital. His ego prevented him from seeing the trap. The moment of revelation arrived. Alejandro organized a massive gala to celebrate the first year of his renewed company, and to announce his official engagement to Valeria. It was going to be the social event of the decade. I received an invitation not as Elena Vargas, but as the CEO of Grupo Castillo, the majority investor he was dying to meet. I arrived at the gala in an armored limousine. I wore a black haute couture dress covered in real diamonds, not the imitations Valeria wore. My hair, once brown and unkempt, was now a shiny black mane. My makeup was sharp, my heels were weapons. I entered the ballroom. Silence fell. No one recognized me at first. They only saw a powerful, beautiful, and intimidating woman. Alejandro rushed toward me with that fake smile I knew so well. Valeria followed behind, looking at me with envy. Mrs. Carmen watched us from her throne, evaluating how much money I had. Welcome, madam. Alejandro waited for me to say my name. I am the president of Grupo Castillo, I said with a slightly different, cold and distant accent. You must be Alejandro. I have heard a lot about your ambition. It is an honor to have you here. Thanks to your investment, we have doubled our profits. Tripled, actually, I corrected. But I see you spend a lot on parties. Where is your son? I heard you have an heir. Ah, yes, little Leo, said Alejandro with disinterest. He is with the nanny. Children get in the way at these business events. Do not you think? I clenched my fists but kept my composure. I see. Well, Alejandro, I came today because there is a small problem with our partnership. Problem? Alejandro became nervous. What kind of problem? A problem of ownership. I made a signal. The music stopped, the main lights went out and a spotlight illuminated me and Alejandro in the center of the dance floor. You see, Mr. Castillo, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. I have been reviewing the accounting books and noticed that you have been using my company's capital for personal expenses. Jewelry for your mistress. I pointed at Valeria. Trips, cars. That is misappropriation of funds. The room gasped. Alejandro turned pale. That is a misunderstanding. I am the owner. You own nothing. I cut him off. According to Clause 4B of the contract you signed without reading due to your greed. In case of mismanagement of funds, full ownership of the company passes to the majority investor. That is, to me. Mrs. Carmen stood up indignantly. Who do you think you are to come insult us in our own house? I turned to her and smiled. A smile that made Carmen step back. This is not your house, Carmen. I also bought the mortgage last week and executed the guarantee this morning. Technically you are trespassers. Alejandro was trembling. Why? He stammered. Why are you doing this to us? Who are you? I approached him. I invaded his personal space. Just as he had done in the hospital. Do you not recognize the woman who gave you a son, Alejandro? I removed the colored contact lenses I wore as a disguise. I wiped the dark lipstick with the back of my hand. I looked him in the eyes with the same gaze I had when he threw me out on the street. Hello, my love, I whispered. Alejandro stepped back as if he had seen a ghost. He stumbled and fell to the floor. Elena, he shouted with a voice broken by terror. Impossible. You are poor. You are a nobody. I am Elena Vargas of the Castillo dynasty and you have just lost everything. The crowd erupted in murmurs. Camera flashes went off. It is her, shouted Valeria, the gold digger. Security. My security men are the only ones in charge here, I said, snapping my fingers. 10 armed men entered the room surrounding the Castillo family. I pulled a document from my handbag. Alejandro, I told you to sign the divorce. But since you threw me out before I could read the fine print of your own trap. You are still married to me, which means half of your debts are mine. But since I am the bank, I have just forgiven my part. Your part, however, remains valid. You owe $50 million and since you have nothing to pay with, you are going to prison for fraud. No, cried Carmen, falling to her knees. Elena, daughter, I always knew you had class. We can fix this. We are family. I looked at her with infinite disgust. You told me my son was a biological investment. You said you did not want to see my face. Well, wish granted. I made another signal. Ramon, bring my son. My butler and right-hand man entered through the main door, carrying Leo in his arms. My baby, my beautiful 6-month-old boy, stretched his arms when he saw me. I ran to him and hugged him. Feeling his weight, his scent, was the medicine my soul needed. No one will ever separate us again, I promised him. I turned to Alejandro, who was still on the floor crying. You whispered to me, I wish I had never married you. Well, Alejandro, today I grant you the wish. Because from today on, for the world you do not exist. You are a fraud, a criminal, and a father who abandoned his son. Elena, please, he begged, crawling to my feet. I love you, it was all a mistake. Valeria forced me. Valeria screamed indignantly. Liar, you planned everything. Take them away, I ordered. The police, whom my lawyers had called beforehand with all the evidence of fraud, entered the room. They handcuffed Alejandro and Valeria. Carmen fainted or pretended to and was taken out on a stretcher. As they took Alejandro away, he looked at me one last time. His eyes were full of regret, but not for love, but for having lost the gold mine he had in his hands and despised. I am the father of that child, he shouted. You were a donor, I replied. My son will have a real father someday. One who does not need money to feel like a man. The outcome. Alejandro was sentenced to 15 years in prison for massive fraud and misappropriation. In prison he learned that I had donated all his personal fortune. What little was left after seizing it. To shelters for single mothers. Valeria, accomplice in the frauds, received 5 years. She lost her beauty and youth behind bars. Mrs. Carmen ended up in a state nursing home, alone, telling stories of greatness that no one believed. I returned to Europe with Leo. He grows up knowing he is loved, not for what he has, but for who he is. I run my empire with a firm but fair hand. And every night when I put my son to bed, I whisper in his ear, "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me." Revenge did not give me back the lost time, but it gave me back my dignity and taught me that sometimes you have to burn the forest so that new and stronger flowers can grow. Alejandro wanted a submissive and poor wife. He got the queen who destroyed him. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.